Welcome. This is the Senior Life Academy located on the campus of the University Park United Methodist Church here in Dallas, Texas. I'm Dee Dee Cassad, and today I have with us the panel that will discuss finances. Miriam Mathis, Bob Monroe, Stephen Fleming, and our guest is Marilyn Hodge. Welcome to you all. We have been requested from some people to talk this time about finances and when we should start considering finances after or before retirement. One of the key questions, of course, is, will I have enough finances? Will my finances last as long as I live? No one knows the answer to that. But we do have some practical suggestions that might help as to how we should begin and handle our finances before we retire. Miriam, I think you first discussed retirement planning long before you retired. Can you explain how you did that?
Actually, my first foray into it was not thinking about so much retirement. I was thinking about financial security and financial freedom. I wanted to be debt-free. I really did. And so I took a class here at the church from a couple of the members who were studied up on it. It was a Dave Ramsey class of financial freedom, financial peace, and found a lot of the suggestions really helpful. I was able to work the program and get debt-free and just breathe and not be so anxious. I had been a single mom for a long time, and we had struggled, and it was a very good move to have taken that class and to take it to heart.
As a businessman, Bob, you look at it entirely differently. When did you start planning your retirement financially?
Well, I started to think about it when I got out of college and started work. To be honest, I didn't do very much putting away early because one of the priorities was to buy our first house, small cottage, 1,100 square feet. But that's how we started, and to build some equity in the house. But I always had an idea that I've got to save early. I was fortunate enough to work for a firm at the time which had defined benefit programs, and not very many do that today. I ended up saving some, helped the kids through college, 3 of them, and then I really started probably focusing more on the retirement when I hit about 40 to 45. And that's when I said, like Marianne, I want to finish work and be debt-free, own the vehicles, whether it's one, for my wife, one for myself, whatever we were going to do, downsize the home and be debt-free. And the firm I was working for decided if you were over 45, I was 55, then you must be brain dead, or they could hire two young people instead of you. And so they had a program to encourage people to leave. I did leave, although they protested. It was kind of funny. And I walked out on a Friday for that firm and went to work for another firm. So in the end, I retired from 2 firms. And then I did consulting. And after that, I started to mix volunteer work with, believe it or not, I worked in a wholesale nursery, basically labor, so that I could offset the expenses at the time. So it was a big focus all my life, but I have to admit I was much more fortunate than many young people today who don't have a defined or a pension plan that went away. Many of the American firms didn't financially support them. So at the same time I hit my goals, I think it's much more difficult today and more important for people to start as young as absolutely possible.
Well, I think we all feel that since we have all been retired for several years, that we're glad that we started when we started. I think that there's a sense in which, though, we need to be more specific if we can as to how we can help them do that. What specifically, Stephen, do you think that the people who are listening to us would gain from your experience of planning?
Well, I was just sitting here thinking of some advice my dad gave me. He had received some kind of bonus or unexpected income in his work, and I said, "Oh, that's I was just saying how great that was to him or something." He said, "Oh, I've just always found that no matter how much money I make, I've always found some way to spend it all," and that made an impression on me for over all these years. I remember that he said that, and I guess I took it as a warning to heart that you don't have to do that, and then you don't have to
Spend all you make.
spend all you make.
That's
and
right.
there's a lot of advice about and examples by people that you can admire who talk about it in the same way. I was recently corrected when I thought I was quoting John Wesley in talking
Give
about
all
earn all you can,
Yeah,
save
save
all you can, and give all you can. That may not have been exactly what he said, but he preached several sermons on money, and
Yes, he did.
they're very instructive, and they follow that motto, whether it was his origination or not. And it's reported that C.S. Lewis lived on 10% of his income and gave the rest of his earnings to charity. So there's quite a wide range of available knowledge about how to manage your money. I think for many reasons it should be something that is in keeping with your values, that doesn't change after you retire, and you do need to plan for that.
Exactly. My experience after my husband passed away 20 some odd years ago, two things I set for myself is I didn't want anything I couldn't afford, and I didn't spend anything buy anything that I couldn't afford. In fact, those two things kept me solvent all these years. I just don't want anything that I can't afford. Is that how you see it, Marilyn?
Well, I grew up, and I'll say that because I started growing up after I got married, I think, because I married a fella who had had an experience in his life that taught him a lot about money. His dad died when he was 15 and left Lawrence and his mother with a business to run and no insurance or anything. And so he grew up very quickly. So from the very beginning, he was very cautious about how we used our money. And he also, we talked about this a good bit before I started working on the concept of this panel, was that there's principle that he has gone by is that in this day and time, no individual is really smart enough to know all the answers about money management. And there are many, many resources that you can use to find out how to manage your money.
Professional resources.
And if you don't have the income to be able to afford a lawyer or a CPA or a financial advisor, you can get on Google.
Yes.
And they have numerous sites that you can go to find out about how to manage your money. And you really need to analyze what you need to live on, basically, and you need to have an idea in mind about your resources and your assets, and take all of that and keep that in mind when you go to your expert, quote unquote.
How do you feel about tithing to the church?
Well, that's very important. That's been something that we have done from the beginning of our marriage.
And that's something, it seems to me, that you have to plan and believe in and structure.
Yes.
It just doesn't happen if you do not plan it.
That's right.
Uh,
And the Bible's very wise. The Bible says it's your first fruits.
It's excellent.
And we have found that if you look at it that way, then that money is God's. And the rest of it is yours to budget and use for yourself.
It's interesting, Marilyn said about the 10%, first for God. And I know someone who's lived a life by saying first 10% was God's, the next 10% was for whenever they could stop working to save that, and then live on the
There-
remainder.
On
don't-
80%.
Good idea.
80%,
Mhm.
don't like
Don't
you should,
touch it, yeah.
don't spend any more than you have to.
That's
You know,
right.
don't-
That's right.
That's hard, I think, to get used to, but people find that they can really live on that 80%, and I think.
And live very well.
And a lot of our culture is spend, consume,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
and that.
And we're living in a culture now that, as far as investments are concerned, I think our people would probably be interested in, we do not know what the future holds as far as the economy. We're fortunate right now to be in a very upscale, lively economy, but that may not last. And overnight, I'm a child of the Depression, and I can remember, not really, but I know that those were the days when you lost everything. But then everything is relative. We'd lose ours, you'd lose yours, you'd lose yours. So we'd all start, in a sense, start all over. But there were people at that time that could not live through that.
That's
I mean,
right.
they could not do it. So there's a sense in which we have to philosophically be prepared and spiritually be prepared to handle whatever comes.
I'd like to say, when I went into the ministry, when I was called to the ministry, I was kind of like Job or Jonah being called in some ways. I was reluctant, and
You didn't want to go to Nineveh?
I didn't want to go to Nineveh at all. But the call was just too obvious and too profound for me to ignore, and I couldn't preach tithing without doing it myself. And I grumbled about it for a while, but I didn't want to be a hypocrite, and I really found that tithing became enough of a discipline for me to order a lot of other things about my finances, and I'm so glad I've talked to other people who've had the same experience. It's not just that you give that 10%, but that it helps you arrange your life around something that's bigger than yourself, and it brings other things into order. That may be kind of late in people's lives to be thinking about that, but if you're not tithing, you're not doing any kind of planning that involves the church. We're going to cut that out, Blake. Okay, I don't want to say that. I want to say something different. If you're not able to tithe 10%, then tithe 2% and see if you can increase it from there. But I really find that it's a good discipline for a healthy sense of what to do with our money.
But it's kind of like Marilyn said to me, once you do it, that's money gone. I never think of it again. I mean, that's not mine, so it's not part of the system. It's just it's as though you only get so much, and that's And so to me, it's a given, and it's not a sacrifice.
I would like to say, though, that I think that for some people, the fear of not having enough is enough of a barrier to prevent them from wanting to do that. And I totally get that, because not out of gratitude for the immense amount of monetary riches that we are as a society blessed with, but it's the opposite feeling of what's going to happen if I do this.
Yes.
And so we have to, that to me is part of the whole discipline. Part of it is the spiritual work that you would have to do in that case to get to the point where you could tithe 6 or 7% and then work up. Because and the class that I took helped me figure out some of that and overcome some of the fear to be able to do it for the first time in my life, really.
Well, you brought it, the fear question is the real big thing. Because we started out with, we do not know if any of us have enough money to take care of us for the rest of our lives because we have no idea how long we're going to live. That is a question no one can really answer.
True.
But it's a consideration that is in everybody's mind and heart, and we're aware of this for the people who are watching. And we need to wrap this up. But I thank you all for this lively conversation. We'd like to hear from you. Our email is on the bottom of the screen. And if you would like to contact us and mention what you would like to talk about, we'd be happy to consider it. In the meanwhile, may God surround you with His grace.